Laura's been a frequent guest to the Democrats of Greater Tucson. We're so glad that you made it. Reform, transparency, and accountability are Laura's core objectives. She endeavors to reform cash bail and all use of capital punishment, divert cases of substance abuse and disorder, as well as mental illness to treatment, and protect people with vulnerable immigration statuses. She is fortifying units in conviction and sentencing, integrity and fraud, and consumer protection to safeguard against unethical and exploitative behaviors. She is building the first adult restorative justice program in the state. Laura was raised in Tucson and earned her undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Arizona, and is proud to serve the community she calls home. Laura, the floor is yours.
I'm in a little security outlet. I hope I'm not breaking any federal aviation laws at this point, but we'll find out. Let me share a few things with you that are hot off the press. I'll take you back really briefly. That when the Dobbs decision came out, let's recall that there was a 1973 order that protected reproductive health from criminalization. It was an order of the court in Pima County Superior Court that protected physicians statewide. That order didn't just disappear when the Dobbs decision came out. So Attorney General Brnovich at the time came into Superior Court and asked that that stay be lifted because of the Dobbs decision. I want to tell you that, as you well know, I have a firm position about whether or not we should be criminalizing healthcare, right? I'm certainly steadfastly against that. However, I am also an officer of the court, and I'm sworn to uphold the law, and I take that oath very seriously. So I looked at Brnovich's legal arguments, where he suggested we should simply return to 1864 as if nothing's happened since. And then I looked at Planned Parenthood's arguments that said, well, no. Since 1973, 50 years have passed, and the Arizona legislature has spoken about reproductive health repeatedly. In fact, 5 separate times, 5 separate definitions existed. And there's a law called harmonization. You have to harmonize what's happened. You can't just choose one. It's not just like, oh, I have 5 options and the judge will just choose one. So I found that to be far more persuasive. And then that required me to literally switch sides. Because in 1973, the Pima County Attorney and the Attorney General were fighting to maintain the power to criminalize abortion. And so I had to switch sides and go up against Brnovich. We lost at the trial court level. We remember that. That was very frustrating. We went straight to the Court of Appeals. They gave us an emergency stay so that reproductive health care would be safe. Although I will tell you, it only resumed in Southern Arizona. Doctors in Maricopa County didn't feel confident about the situation. But I'm pleased to say that the reassurance was enough that care resumed in Southern Arizona. And then we won at the Court of Appeals, which was fantastic. And so reproductive health care up to 15 weeks, which was the last word by the Arizona legislature, continued on. Then Chris Mays won. She became our Attorney General. Pause for a second. I could not be more pleased. Every single day I like to say I do 280 little signs of the cross 280 times for those 280 votes that Chris Mays and you guys all worked so hard for, right? So she joined my side she also switched sides from Brnovich to where we were all now on the same side of the litigation until the Arizona Supreme Court, about a week, 10 days ago, allowed Yavapai County to enter into the litigation at the 11th hour, literally to argue for the right to continue to criminalize and to go back to the 1864 near total ban. And they allowed him to intervene. It's disappointing. It seems late in the game, but it is what it is. And then while I was lecturing 2 days ago, they gave us the oral argument date of December 12th. So on December 12th, the Arizona Supreme Court will hear all of our arguments. We're working now to figure out the very brightest minds from Planned Parenthood, from my office, from the Attorney General's office, who will split time and argue for the Arizona Supreme Court against a doctor who represents unborn children and the Yavapai County attorney. And so stay tuned. That's obviously going to be an intense time. Who knows when we will get that ruling? That will be very interesting chronologically as well, because regardless, we'll be in the heat of battle collecting signatures for a constitutional amendment to get us out of this mess permanently. You know, obviously that's the best fix we could ask for. So that's a quick inside update. Number two I'll give you is that after a great long time, a lot of patience, maybe loss of patience by me at times, with diversion funding, et cetera. We have officially launched restorative justice as promised in Pima County. We are piloting our first case next week. So we have certified mediators, we have certified volunteers who've been through orientation. Our prosecutors have been trained to look for cases that will be appropriate for restorative justice. We have our victim advocate ready to explain to the victim that they are in complete and total control about whether their case goes into restorative justice. And we're ready. We're ready to start piloting. I'm so thrilled to finally be able to say that we came through and we followed through on that promise. And God willing, we're going to get the kind of results that they get in other places across the nation where victims feel heard and restored, and participants, defendants, return to the criminal justice system at a fraction of normal processes. You know, they do so well after a restorative justice experience. So fingers crossed on that. The last update, I'll tell you, I'm kind of hitting you with the three most timely things that are going on. The last one is I'll be in front of the Board of Supervisors tomorrow. This will be our second intergovernmental agreement. The first one we did with the Pascua Yaqui tribe. The Pascua Yaqui tribe believes it was the first in the nation where a county prosecutor, me, specially deputizes Pascua prosecutors to come in and to co-try cases with us as a way to be accountable, as a way to be transparent so that they can see what we're doing, and to better serve Pascua Yaqui victims, to make sure that we are doing the best that we possibly can from a culturally sensitive point of view. So we got that done about 6 months ago, and tomorrow we'll be asking the Board of Supervisors to approve the second that with the Tohono O'odham Nation. And they will, and so then we'll begin the process of swearing in and specially deputizing a couple of awesome prosecutors to do the same, so that we're, again, with the promise of serving all of us in this big, huge, beautiful county, as best we can, as equally and as fairly and as accessibly as we can. And with that, those are my three kind of hot updates. As you know, I prefer you guys to have as much time as possible to ask questions, and I would be very happy to take your questions.
There was a program on NPR, and they were talking about how a lot of jails and prisons aren't air conditioned. And I was wondering if our jails and prisons in Pima County are all air conditioned, and what about the rest of Arizona, if you know?
If we're not thinking of those most vulnerable, then we're just not thinking right. I want to tell you that the Pima County Jail our Wilmot Prison, those are kind of the two big facilities in Tucson. The Juvenile Detention Center, that's an important third one. I don't hear complaints about air conditioning access or problems there. From my time in the feds, I can tell you that there were always issues in the private prisons, which was more immigration detention. And I'll also tell you that the reverse can be true, Lillian, in Arizona, where cold, frigid temperatures are blasted at all hours, which can be an excuse to limit their access to bathing and showering, because that's one of the most expensive activities within a jail. And so obviously that's a completely other travesty, frankly, on the opposite end. But I do know, Lillian, that there are many facilities in Texas that are really struggling with not being cool enough. And that can lead to, as we all know, that can lead to very serious health consequences.
Okay, Susie Anderson has a question. Unmute yourself, Susie, and ask your question.
Yeah, when, let's see, Governor Hobbs, I believe, gave Attorney General Mays the right to let you county attorneys, that you did not have to prosecute anyone for getting an abortion. Am I correct on that?
It's quite complex, and you're right to have a lot of questions and to express any kind of confusion about that. This is the legal thinking. The Dobbs decision said that control over reproductive health and the laws around that were going to return to the states. Instead of a nationwide Roe versus Wade protection, the states were going to decide for themselves. The governor's executive order then declared, I am the state lead officer, and I'm going to take control, and I'm going to direct the Attorney General that she alone would have the power to prosecute a case that might be referred to a county attorney by a local law enforcement. And I did the best I could legally with that, because I understand why they're doing it. I agree that the issue is of critical importance and severity. I very much agree that we have an equal protection problem because reproductive health care continued safely in Southern Arizona, but not in Phoenix and not beyond. And when you're having a medical emergency, you can't be traveling hours to safety. And that's an equal protection problem. And so I took the position that I declared that if any referral ever came to me, I would voluntarily send it to the Attorney General. other county attorneys are, very, very unhappy with what they think is, a power move, power grab, and they have their legal arguments. And I'm just glad that reproductive health care is continuing safely in Southern Arizona.
Okay, and to follow up with that, I was wondering if it is the person themselves who undergoes the abortion, or, is perceived to have an abortion because they miscarried and needed to have a dilatation and curettage in order to finish the process to make sure they would not become infected. Or is the doctor, at fault for any of this?
It's the caregivers that are under the status of the law right now in Arizona. It's the providers who are the most at risk if we return to a near total ban. And I worry constantly about women who are experiencing medical issues past the 15-week. That's just a very frightening situation, obviously. And I worry about victims of crime. That total ban does not protect victims of assault and other domestic crimes. And that, and so that obviously is another big part of what has forced me into this space. And I'm honored to be here at this dynamic time in history, to do everything I can to make things as safe and healthy as I can.
And thank you very much. I appreciate your being there.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Yeah, Maricopa County, and some of the other counties just are not stepping up to the plate.
It's not a good situation. A couple of friends of mine have said that the Maricopa County attorney has been clear as mud on the issue, and we can assume many reasons why. It's unbelievably unclear what would happen if she gets a referral, and that makes things just absolutely untenable in Phoenix, because it creates fear and hesitation. And the last thing a person experiencing a medical emergency, and if it's the last thing you need is hesitation over what's at stake. You want a doctor moving as quickly as humanly possible when someone's life is at stake.
Okay, George, any questions in the chat room?
Yes, we have one from Ron Norrish. He asks, can physicians refuse to provide an abortion in Pima County?
Well, George, that's a good question. Or right, George, Ron, both of you. Ron, that's a good question. That's an interesting question. I don't know that I've been hearing those complaints. The complaints I've been hearing are physicians who feel like because the patient is past 15 weeks, their hands are tied. I know that, I think you guys have met Amy Fitch, yes, candidate for LD17, and she has been granted permission to share a story of a Davis-Monthan Air Force captain who tracked her down through social media, could not, desperate to find her and to find anyone, because they have a beautiful 2-year-old child, and his wife went to that 18-week visit where maybe you get to learn the gender. And instead, she was told, we are so unbelievably sorry, but this is not, like, nothing's happened since your last appointment. It's not, the baby's not developing at all. The fetus is not, there's nothing happening here. It's not, this is not viable. And that kind of news is just so devastating. And then it somehow gets worse because they say, the problem is you're not in any medical danger right now. Like, as you sit here on the table, you're fine. And you're past 15 weeks. And so therefore, we can't do anything for you right now. And we don't even feel safe telling you how to get help. Which is why the captain the pilot was desperate to find Amy, to say, what in God's name do we do now? With this horrible, devastating situation. And she was able to thank God he found her, and she was able to get him the information that the family, he and his wife, needed. But that's the main thing right now, is that I think in other words, in Southern Arizona, the providers are here. If you need help and you can get help, there's help here as long as they feel safe lawfully. And that's what this fight is for.
Okay, Craig Markin has a question.
Yes, hello. Recently, there has been a movement among state attorney generals to enforce Section 3 of the the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution about insurrectionists being ineligible for office. Can there be anything done on the county level?
So my sense is that that's probably keeping our attorney general up at night. If I had to make a guess about what's heavy on her mind right now, that's probably one of the things. And along with the elector issue that went on, with the Arizona electors. And Craig, all I can say is that I feel like this one time I'm getting a pass, right? That like I've been forced to deal with every possible heavy duty controversy in the middle of a world pandemic that we could possibly imagine. And this one time, this is not on my desk. It's on her desk. And, again, I just say I send up good vibes to her every night.
Thank you.
You bet, Craig. Thank you.
Okay, Edlin, you have a question.
I have a comment. My sister-in-law, her first pregnancy, wound up in a position like you just talking about, Laura. But this was in Jersey, and even though it was available, she had a HOA, home health thing. So one doctor in the group said he heard a heartbeat, the other one didn't. At almost 8 months of pregnancy and losing 20 pounds, which she didn't have to lose, they induced birth. And it wasn't even a fetus, it was a blob. Now, this young woman that Amy's going to help right now, carrying a dead whatever, could cause her major problems in the women's health. So,
yes, I'm sorry to hear that, Edlin. Yeah, it's unbelievable to think that we're just, I don't know, trying to legislate medical advice or decisions, or it's terribly dangerous. And I think that the data
coming from men.
Yes.
And men.
And people of color are absolutely at the most, in the worst possible position. The mortality of pregnant Black women, like just now is not a time to be reducing access in healthcare, and it's and instead we're exacerbating. Yes, it's there are some fascinating lawsuits that are proceeding in Texas about these exact issues of women being forced to carry when they shouldn't have, and the devastation, both physically and of course emotionally. And I will be very interested to see where that litigation goes.
We're looking forward to seeing you on the 13th. Check your personal.
Good, thank you.
But I have two beautiful nieces who are now in their 50s, so Fortunately, she was okay, but it was a horrible time for the whole family, and we were in our 20s. And
Yes.
like, oh my
I,
God.
I,
you know?
I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
Well, George, do we have any other questions in the chat room?
Yes, we have a question from Mary Carrier. She says, please talk about your decision to make access to public records more difficult and more expensive.
I'm really glad this question came up, and I think it should have been number 4 in my leadoff to address it. I'm still kind of thinking about ways that I can and should communicate around this. So here is my irony. Here's the irony I'm living with. I ran on transparency. It was one of my promises. I wanted to be as transparent as humanly possible. I feel like the data is the data of the people, and it should be as accessible as possible. By virtue of that, I think it caused a shocking uptick in public records requests. We have one individual, for example, who's had well over 500 contacts with our office since the day I started. And you can imagine that most importantly, in the realm of body-worn camera footage, which I was such a huge proponent of, TPD had it for years. During my time campaigning, I was really pushing the sheriff's department to join in. They did, and that's fantastic. So you can imagine, I assumed that when I arrived at the office, there would be an infrastructure to handle, thousands upon thousands of hours of body-worn camera that comes in on a daily basis. And there was no infrastructure. For whatever reason, it wasn't planned for. So we have gone from a half-time public records attorney to 3. We've gone from a secretary to 2 paralegals. We've done everything humanly possible out of our budget to meet the need, because here's the irony. Here's the irony. It's a queue through a portal. So once you throw the public record in, like, you're next, and we don't choose which ones to answer. So what that means is that, okay, I really want something, I deserve something, it's correct under the law, Laura wants to give it to me, and I'm behind the queue of a request that we just finished for 50 hours of body-worn camera. That takes 150 hours to properly redact and push out. So in other words, like, I'm being foiled, and people are having to wait far too long because it's an unfunded mandate. The state didn't take care of us. Nothing's happened. Law enforcement's allowed to charge. So where do people come? They come to the free office. So it's frustrating. It's not a place I want to be in. And luckily, we haven't even begun the stakeholder process yet. We don't even have a drafted bill. I'm going to do what I do always and every time is of course engage openly in the stakeholder process, so that minds far more brilliant than mine can make suggestions about how to keep it flowing to the public, but to somehow get it funded so that we can actually get our work done and get our job done as we should and as we want to. So it'll be an interesting time. It's only just begun.
Okay, George, any other questions?
Questions. Susie Anderson asks about Catholic hospital physicians do not provide abortions because their faith. There are other physicians who because of their faith could refuse to provide termination care. I believe that's just a statement. And then we have Allison Hughes. She said, I will never forget the U of A stadium deal, which led to an agreement that no abortions would be performed at the UA Medical Center. Do you have any do you know anything about the current status of this issue? Did this deal carry over to Banner?
I do not. I will research that. I have a meeting coming up with Planned Parenthood this week, and I will ask the status of that and educate myself on the history of that, Allison. And we can talk offline if you can tell me the history of that. Yeah, most assuredly. Thank you for raising that.
Okay.
There's
And
another question as a follow-up question for Mr. Ron. Nora, she says, do you support the AG? Should she indict the fake electors from Arizona?
I won't speculate. It's never a good idea to speculate on, a lawsuit or an indictment that you haven't read yourself. We're supposed to stay away from that. So I'll answer a different question, which is that I can't, and I've made it clear already, but I went from an attorney general who did not offer any help, to say the least, and was a little bit of a dark cloud hanging over me about what kind of, forget help, but what kind of hurt we might have with his ideas in mind. And so to go from that to an attorney general who provides the kind of support that's literally in the statutes, where it directs the attorney general by law to assist and support and guide and mentor and help train all the 15 county attorneys. And she does that and more so. And I really did not know her well. I'm getting to know her very well. And I think the state is extraordinarily lucky. She is brilliant. And in it for the right reasons, I think. And it has made my life exponentially better. So, and yours too, I hope. So we'll see where it goes. Joe, I'm getting buzzed that it might finally be time to line up and leave Albuquerque and come back home to the old Pueblo. But you guys, thank you so much for your patience. I'm so sorry for the strange little room I found myself in here. But you guys,
thank you so much. You go
lovely.
catch your plane. Great meeting as always, Laura. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for your hard work. You guys are the heartbeat. We can't do this without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy Labor Day.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Safe flying home.
Thank you.